as those matric results, excitements will start to die down. Reality kicks in for many pupils and parents. Now, some pupils may not have done as well as they had hoped. Others could have failed, or they may not have made it into the tertiary institution of their choice. So what now? How do they deal with the not so great news? We chat to clinical psychologist now, Samukeliswe Mthembu, who joins us virtually from Cape Town. Samukeliswe, thank you so much for your time this evening. As I've mentioned there, there'll be all kinds of emotions and experiences in every household, individual to each and every household. But what they're seeing in the newspapers, on the television, hearing on the radio right now is just absolute elation, excitement, people jumping up and down with excitement, parents hugging their kids for doing so well. Let's start there. What kind of impact could seeing all of those kinds of scenes have on the family, on a matric pupil and their parents who perhaps have not fared as well as they had hoped? And how can they deal with the emotions that they feel when watching or listening to those scenes?
Thank you so much for having me. So as much as, we try and prepare our children, teachers try and prepare their students for disappointment, seeing other people doing well or just being happy to have passed when you know that you can do better or when you were aiming to reach a certain mark, to get into a certain university can be absolutely devastating. And as much as we try and tell our children, life is not a 100-meter sprint. It's a long distance race. And even those who did well now in matric, we don't know how they're going to fare in university. It's still very difficult to process because when you're at that stage in your life, it means so much. And as society, we also hype it as it meaning so much. The results get produced or published on the paper and everybody knows about it. Then you still have to go to school to fetch your statement there, and then of course you might get your friends and your peers asking you what you got. So there's no hiding from it, and I think that's what makes it worse. The media and everything that comes with being in matric.
And this is a generation that very much is always taking in others' experiences. We speak at length about the impact on social media specifically, and it's almost like they've been added layers of how the outside world or other people's so-called social media lives can have an impact on your own psychology. Do you think we've done enough work in ensuring that our kids can feel free and confident to speak about how they feel, about how they see other people doing well, them not doing so well? Are we aware of those important conversations that need to continuously take place?
As much as South Africa, I think as a whole, has put in quite a huge amount of effort to suicide awareness before and after matric results have been released. There's still a long way to go because essentially we build up this reality about doing well, and it starts off just at the beginning of matric as well. So to just now try and put a prevention plan towards the end when the matriculants has now receiving their marks, sometimes it's not quite, it doesn't hit the mark when it comes to building one's psyche to deal with disappointment, and also to deal with the fact that there is life after matric and that there's many avenues to get to the goal, and the road to success is a windy one. It's not a straight one.
Absolutely. If parents or peers of matric students are watching this right now and they perhaps are concerned about a fellow matric student or their child or loved one that perhaps hasn't been as open about how they feel about not doing so well, what should they be looking out for? Because it's all well and good to have an open conversation and the family saying, listen, we're going to make this work, we're going to have a remark and you can redo it in June and we're going to do this together. When they go to their rooms at night, or whatever their circumstances might be, and they open their cell phone and they scroll through whatever they're scrolling through, it's in those dark moments that it's quite dangerous, isn't it? What should we be looking out for?
I think there's definitely isolation. So you use the word dark moments. And usually when people are contemplating suicide or doing something to themselves or engaging in risky behavior because they're upset, they will usually isolate themselves from the people that are likely to talk them out of it, or the people that are going to make them change their mood, even though they don't want to change their mood because they're quite upset. So just be aware of if there's matriculants in the house. Try and find ways to make sure that the person is not continually isolated, because as much as people will put up a front and pretend that they're happy, but in the background they're actually getting ready to do something harmful, dangerous to themselves. And it's also just to, because dealing with the teen population, they're more likely to publish something on social media before it gets to the family or to their friends. So to just be maybe a little bit more aware of what they're posting on social media, what the mood is. Do they remove their profile picture from their different platforms, their social media platforms, and just ways of, I guess, looking at what teenagers do and seeing what are they doing less of and how are they acting different to what they usually do.
Now, we focus quite obviously on the matric student as an individual, but there'll be a lot of emotions that families, parents, caregivers would be going through. There are a lot of families in South Africa where getting a child to matric is of the most important thing they'll ever do. Sometimes it's the first child or first family member to make it all the way to matric, and so much then rests on their shoulders about trying to help their family get to a better place. What is your advice to the adults in these households, and what feelings they might be having in trying to deal with a child that they had invested so much of their time and obviously money into as well, who might not just have done what they needed them to do at this exact moment?
I think it's important to allow people to be upset. So if your child hasn't done well, I mean, you can't hide the fact, especially if you've sacrificed a lot of your salary or whatever sacrifices you've made as a parent to put that child in school. It's important for that parent to feel the way they feel, but without letting those feelings impose onto the child to the point where they feel that the child has been so much of a disappointment to the parents that they would harm themselves. So it's important to yes, go through the emotions and compose yourselves, possibly in isolation if you can, away from the child. Express how you feel. Let your child know that it's disappointing, but that also it's not their fault, or to consider factors. Maybe they lost a loved one that year. Maybe the pandemic was particularly difficult for them. Just to remind their children that as much as it's disappointing, it's not what was desired, that there is life afterwards, and that they can be there to support their child.
Like I messaged somebody today, it's not the be-all and the end-all, it's just the start. Thank you so much. We have been chatting to clinical psychologist Samukeliswe Mthembu from Cape Town. Great hands-on advice there. We do really thank her for her time and her expertise this evening.